Here's the thing about this book. It's fucking funny. Better than food, man. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. Delicious. Mugs in the description below if you'd like to support the show. Thank you so much. Today is Ottessa Moshfegh's My Year of Rest and Relaxation, published in 2018. A New York Times bestseller. I don't review many of those on the show. It's kind of funny. I take Benadryl to sleep sometimes, like every night, because obviously. And she takes Benadryl, but like I think a handful in the book. We'll get into it. But it's interesting just kind of like nodding out, like reading this book about sleep. And then she took these pills, and then she took those pills, and then she took more of these pills. In fact, you could call this book a snoozer. But this book is actually not a snoozer at all. It's quite good. The readability is enviable. It's quite good writing. I mean, it just shoots, I mean, for being about, for such a minimalistic plot, for being such a contained, sparse story, really, at heart, the speed with which you just go through it is almost frenetic. I mean, it moves very fast. But really quick, today's review is sponsored by Boxwalla. Boxwalla is this awesome bi-monthly subscription service that curates boxes personalized to your taste. They are, in their own words, a discovery platform for curious people. And I feel that description is quite accurate. They're a phenomenal resource for finding great things. They have 3 categories of boxes: books, beauty, and film. With the book boxes, they showcase great literature from around the world, including both forgotten classics and contemporary fiction. Each book box contains 2 books housed in a box. Boxwalla chooses 1 book that everybody gets, and then subscribers choose a second from several options. So for the October box, Boxwalla has chosen Dumigolo, The Hidden Notebooks, by the Senegalese author Boubacar Boris Diop. And the other choices are these 3. My First and Only Love by Sahar Khalife, Palestinian author. There's a blurb on the front here saying that she's the Virginia Woolf of Palestinian literature. Very cool. The appropriately named October by the South African author Zoe Wittkop. And finally, a novel by the Romanian author Mircea Cărturescu called Nostalgia. For the film box, they work exclusively with the Criterion Collection, curating the films from their collection. Only the best. And in their beauty boxes, they showcase plant-based skincare made by ethical independent brands. Very nice. It goes without saying any of these boxes would make an excellent gift. And the boxes themselves are really cool. They're actually made by a family-owned business in Rajasthan, India, from handmade tree-free paper, using a traditional paper-making technique that takes several weeks. They're kind of fuzzy. Great craftsmanship. Boxwalla also had a great article about them in the LA Times recently, and I've linked to that below. Check it out. Through their book boxes, Boxwalla wants people to read the world, and I can definitely get on board with that. So check them out using the link below and get 10% off your first box by using the code BETTERTHANFOOD. Supporting sponsors supports the show. Thanks a bunch. I admit I probably wouldn't have picked this up if I hadn't read this terrific article by Adam Lehrer, linked in the description below, whose book Communions I reviewed not too long ago, called The Disgust of Ottessa Moshfegh. I was like, all right, let's have a look, you know? It's not often that I read a mainstream author, or that a mainstream author looks appealing. So I picked it up down here in St. Pete at Book and Bottle, great wine bar bookstore, if any of you are ever in town. Highly recommended. And I'm glad I did. Oh man. Ottessa Moshfegh is a contemporary author. Her parents are musicians. Her mother is from Croatia and her father is from Iran. I think they had to leave and come to America because of the Iranian Revolution. Fascinating story in itself. As she puts it in this interview I've linked to below, my grandfather in Iran, who was a self-made, basically illiterate billionaire with ties to the Shah, was forced out at gunpoint and lost his fortune. That's brutal. So this is the first of Moshfegh's books I've read. This is not her first. She's written a couple before this. As I said, this came out in 2018. She just came out with a new one called La Pavna, which I've heard is good. It takes place in a kind of a medieval, possibly Eastern Europe. I'm not sure. I think her breakout was called Eileen, but that was not her first. Her first was one called Migloo, which I believe she has said is better than Eileen, but wasn't as popular for some reason. And Migloo is about, I believe, an 18th century murderer locked away in the jail portion of a ship. And so anyways, I'm looking forward to reading that one as well. This book takes place in New York City in the year 2000 up until September 11th, 2001. It's the story of a young woman who wants to sleep for a year, referring to it at one point as her hibernation project. She graduated from Columbia. She works in a gallery. She's model beautiful. She inherited some money from her parents who passed away recently, within weeks of each other, I think. It's enough to live on, for a while at least. She has one friend who swings by her place frequently, named Riva, about the same age, I think, whose life motto perhaps seems to come from the most mundane kind of self-help prescriptions. She's fighting to have it all. She's fashion conscious. She's seeing a married man, her boss, I think. She drinks like a fish. She exercises constantly. She's bulimic. She follows the advice of magazines. It's funny because our protagonist, this girl who is unnamed, doesn't really like her and doesn't treat her very well, but is stuck in kind of a fated sisterly bond with this girl, almost against her will, it seems. So yeah, the story, how to describe it? It's something like an attempt at an eradication of a life without being a full-fledged suicide. A rebirth or renewal in one of the strangest manners possible. It's an experiment done by a woman who wants to annihilate her former life. A kind of pharmacologically induced metamorphosis. Let's read some, shall we? Days slipped by obliquely, with little to remember. Just a familiar dent in the sofa cushions, a froth of scum in the bathroom sink like some lunar landscape, craters bubbling on the porcelain when I washed my face or brushed my teeth. But that was all that went on, and I might have just dreamt up the scum. Nothing seemed really real. Sleeping, waking, it all collided into one gray, monotonous plane ride through the clouds. This is how I knew the sleep was having an effect. I was growing less and less attached to life. If I kept it going, I thought, I'd disappear completely, then reappear in some new form. This was my hope. This was the dream. So yeah, it's kind of a disturbing premise, but it's humorous in the manner that it's executed. Her method of doing so is to take a year of rest and relaxation, in which she intends to sleep for as long as possible, using pills she's been prescribed by this outstandingly bizarre, psychotic psychiatrist cat lady, who I seem to remember as often wearing a neck brace. One of the strangest characters I've come across in a while, kind of brilliantly written. The dialogue from this woman is just outrageous. It's terrific. Some of these lines, man. Like this woman is completely discombobulated in a way that I've, but so like consistently discombobulated, right? Like every time she sees her, she goes to her office. She tells her, like, you know, the protagonist, this girl, she tells her psychiatrist that her parents have died, like 5 times, and she always forgets every single time. And finally, she just says she murdered them. And the psychiatrist like doesn't bat an eye. She just like writes it down. She's like, "How'd you do it?" She's like, "I crushed oxycodone and mixed it in my mom's vodka." She's like, "That'll do it." Like something like that. It's just like, it's so dark. You know that kind of honesty that comes when you're drunk or high on pills or something, and the fear of repercussion stemming from what you say just gets obliterated and suddenly you don't have a filter anymore? That's kind of what this book is like, in the best way, in a smart way. Like the protagonist is like, fuck it, I'm just gonna call it as I see it. I'm just gonna be totally honest. Moshfegh is one of the great modern satirists. Her style falls somewhere between Bret Easton Ellis with a dash of Bukowski, which really ties the whole room together, so to speak. One of these guys is outrageously cold, Ellis of course. The other can be, but is actually quite warm. Borderline sentimental, sometimes. Bukowski, that is. Maybe it's like the drunk factor, I don't know. The drunk thing seems to make Bukowski sentimental. Both are cynical, both have exceptional senses of humor. They were the ones that came to mind first for me, I don't know. Both are authors who can induce hysterical convulsions of laughter, as can she. Add a sharp, modern, feminine perspective and you may be somewhere in the vicinity of Moshfegh's style. Call me crazy, but I'd even say her style isn't dissimilar to Welbeck, actually. Though of course the content is, you know, less outrageous. But the same droll, satirical delivery, the first-person perspective, the could-give-a-fuck attitude, totally. There's a fabulous description of the bios of the attendees, you know, the who's who of this art party. Important people whose bios she was supposed to research. On page 184, I don't know if I'll read the whole thing, but it's fucking ridiculous. I've been responsible for keeping a list of some of the most socially valuable people at an art party, specifically the young impresarios and their attendants. She invited them to openings and told me to study their bios. Maggie Kapoor's father had owned the largest private collection of Picasso doodles in the world, and when he died she donated them to an abbey in the south of France. The monks named a cheese after her. Gwen Elbaz Burke was the grandniece of Ken Burke, the performance artist who was eaten by the shark he kept in a swimming pool, and the daughter of Zara Ali Elbaz, a Syrian princess who was exiled for making a pornographic art film with her German boyfriend, a descendant of Heinrich Himmler. Stacy Bloom had started a magazine called Kunst, about women in the arts, mostly profiles of rich art party girls who were starting their own fashion lines or opening galleries or nightclubs or starring in indie movies. Her father was the president of Citibank, and it just goes on and on. Totally cutting. Here's the thing about this book. It's fucking funny. I used to laugh out loud reading Bukowski, and the same thing happened here. Her boyfriend, or the guy she's fucking named Trevor, is kind of a Bateman character, but sort of inept. A self-absorbed banker in Manhattan who prefers blowjobs to sex, which is funny because to irk him, she asks him whether or not that's gay and he doesn't speak to her for weeks. That kind of guy. Fucking Trevor. The flat, blunt sarcasm and the kind of idiosyncratic oddball obsessions of the protagonist make the whole novel. She's this beautiful young girl seeking to waste her time in the most mundane fashion possible, constantly watching used VHS tape after VHS tape of bad, and I mean like bad 90s films. The kind of stuff like you would pick up in like CVS or Rite Aid, which I think she does actually. Whoopi Goldberg is her icon and hero, her anchor of comfort, and also absolute proof for her that nothing is sacred. That's an interesting moment in the book. So yeah, she lives in her apartment with her pills and works at a gallery sometimes. The gallery shows these bizarre pieces, pretentious beyond description. There's a young artist named Ping Ji who displays a whole series of taxidermied dogs that shoot red lasers from their eyes when you flip a switch. Rumored to have been elaborately murdered by Ji himself. I think another artist made these monkey dolls entirely out of pubic hair, stuff like that. Yeah. Her job doesn't pay much, but I think just basically consists of her, taking care of small tasks and glaring at gallery viewers when they come in. She often sneaks away to sleep in a closet. Eventually she's fired for sleeping too much and fucking up tasks at work. So on her way out, she pulls an Amber Heard in the middle of the gallery, a kind of scatological commentary on the art scene. You know, my roommate saw Amber Heard at Whole Foods when we lived in LA. Can you imagine that now? Being Amber Heard in Whole Foods, everybody just looking at you. Guy at the butcher hands you your organic ground beef, just shaking his head. Shame on you, man. Speaking of scatology, Moshfegh seems to get this rap about always having poop in her stories or something like that, I don't know. And it's not that much of a focus at all, in this one, at least. I can't speak for her other books, but I don't know. Seems like it might have been overblown, but what do I know? Granted, the thing that really sealed the deal and pushed me over the edge wanting to read her work was from this interview that a fellow did with her, another writer named Luke Goebel, who eventually became her husband, I believe. Anyway, she reveals in this interview that like a decade before this interview took place, there was this guy who now works for Vice, who once emailed her to ask her out on a date for like ice cream or something, but then chickened out. And she said she looked up their email correspondence, and in the last email that she'd written him, she said, "Have you ever read Philosophy in the Boudoir? Marquis de Sade says anal sex is best when the ass is full of shit. What do you think?" And the guy never responded. Pussy. What do you think? Guys, it doesn't really work for girls, but guys, if any gal has the comedic gall to write you that before the first date, get the fucking ice cream. I don't want to give you the wrong impression though. Her writing is actually mostly restrained. It's very good writing. You can tell she worked at it. It's really something to be studied, I think. How does it move so well? It's incredible. There seems to be a deep, sincere sadness at the bottom of Moshfegh's writing. A wellspring for the brilliant comedy that she constructs. A sadness with what modern human life is and what's valued. A disappointment and longing that's totally relatable. To men or women, I think either can feel it, for sure. The fact that there's a component that a lot of us can understand or even relate to in a young New Yorker's desire to sleep for a year says something, no? It's this total, all-consuming exhaustion with everything. Everything. With relationships, with money, with art, whatever the fuck that is these days. With goals, with success, whatever. With everything that is offered. Nothing looks good, right? All of it is a sham. It's all a sham. Nothing sounds better, nothing sounds like more authentically rejuvenating than deep, restorative sleep. Or just like, which is also to say, just like a shutting off of the machine, like an escape, a dropout. That's why like drugs are so appealing. That's why there's the opioid epidemic, right? I think Moshfegh has really captured something here. I think she's really captured this collective, deep and total exhaustion with all of it, with culture, with fucking everything, right? With politics, with the search for happiness or love or this, that, and the other. Just with like the constant, the battle, right? The embattled American populace. The fucking tired. And not just American, don't get me wrong. Just, it's where it takes place. At the worst point in my life, the image that I had in my head was of myself lying down on the sand of a beach as the surf washed over me. Not dead, but sleeping. Deeply tired, exhausted with life. And all things considered, my life has been pretty easy for the most part, you know. So while the book is humorous, you know, while it's extremely funny, it is deeply tragic at the same time. And I mean, you know, the greatest comedians are often, I think, or have in the past been very depressed people. Makes total sense. So the book seems to be sort of a tearing away of the veil of behaviors and relationships built up all around us, right? And inquiring in its own way, you know, what the hell are we doing anyways, right? Which of course leaves us with no answers. And thank God she doesn't even try. I mean, it's so much stronger with what she's done. She's just asking questions. She's asking great questions. Like what, the use of this woman's time, this young, beautiful, well-off woman who, I mean, like, so many people are jealous of her, and yet, like, what, like, who cares what she does with her time? Like, why shouldn't she be watching Whoopi Goldberg VHS tapes on repeat, high as fuck on Inframidorol or whatever? So the novel begs the question, is she the strange one, or is life just fucking weird? How irrational, given the circumstances, given the shape of everything, is her desire? What the hell are all of these odd relationships with people and family and bosses and lovers we have anyways? As Moshfegh herself says, if you're feeling weird about being alive, it's not because you need medication. It's because it is fucking weird. Life is weird. It's not just you. It's weird and uncomfortable and awkward. And in the end of this story, there's no real change in the character. There's no redemption or development or anything really. She just wakes up. Whatever that means. She's not different, really. I think things are sort of heightened or a little bit more intense, but in the final stretch, wherein she takes an obscene amount of pills and sleeps as much as possible for 3 months, she enters this kind of odd Twilight Half-Life psychosis. She schedules food to be delivered to her, like a pizza a week by that artist, Ping Ji. She like flips the lock on her door to her apartment so it like locks her in, basically, because she was having like issues doing sleepwalking, not only sleepwalking, like sleep ordering Chinese food and sleep this, that, and the other, sleep making appointments for like haircuts or whatever, like sleep everything. This is a fulfillment of one woman's desire to just completely drop out of the game. Instead of struggling and dealing with it like all the other individuals in that city, she's just like, fuck this shit, I'm out. It's so punk in a way. The sleep thing is interesting too. You know, sleep, it's this near cessation of life in order for it to continue, in order for you to function. I think it'd be great if death were like sleep, personally. That reminds me of this great song by, this great old song by Jody Reynolds called Endless Sleep. Come join me, baby, in my endless sleep. Great song. Deeply tragic. It's interesting how the song kind of relates to that thing I talked about lying on the beach. If you listen to the song, you'll see. Actually, I heard about Reynolds from John Waters after he played Tarantula, this instrumental song, same album, incredible song. But yeah, John Waters played that on a radio show one Halloween, playing tracks on the station with Iggy Pop. Also, Waters just did an interview recently with Moshfegh. Link below. It's pretty good. They talk about poop. So it's interesting, you know, the whole locking yourself away in your apartment for a year and that kind of thing. It was 2018, you know, a couple of years before the pandemic. And then all of a sudden, everybody's doing something closer than is comfortable to what this woman is doing. Yeah, the whole world, basically. It's curious how it kind of expresses that fatigue of the millennial generation and ushers in this whole new era of shit that we are currently in the beginning of. Yeah. Anyways, while being unsatisfied with the ending, I love the kind of pathetic, anticlimactic quality. Instead of this grand journey of self-realization or redemption, it's just about this gal who gets pilled up and sleeps for a year. For reasons most of us can probably not just understand, but probably relate with. At least me. So better than food? Yes, I think so. Not perfect, not perfect. I didn't care for the ending, but God, it was so fucking funny. So what did I dislike? Yeah, there was such a great setup but the ending felt kind of flat for me. There really wasn't much of an ending. There was no real fundamental change in the character, it seemed. Only kind of a continuation of a consciousness reinvigorated with a tolerance for living. It's not necessary that the character needs to change per se. I mean, most of us don't. And perhaps this is saying something in and of itself. It just seems like there was something that could have happened there that didn't. I'm not sure. Even if there was no ending, it may be the only possible ending for this story, you know? Better than food. So you should read it. Anyone who enjoyed American Psycho? American Psycho. Anyone who enjoyed American Psycho and Tales of Ordinary Madness by Bukowski. All right. Coffee time. For those of you who are new, thank you very much for stopping by. I take the names of all the patrons on Patreon who have donated $5 or more per video to the show. I place their names in this mason jar. I pull out a name for every review, and whoever's name is pulled out, I send them a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious. I was just drinking it. It's from Myanmar. If you would like to get in on that and help support the show, you can click on the link below or go to patreon.com/booksarbetterthanfood and donate $5 or more per video, and I sincerely appreciate it. Thank you. If you donate $1 or more, you'll get access to the Patron-Only Reviews and some more cool stuff listed below. Check it out. Thanks a bunch. Unfortunately, international shipping is not included. Sorry about that. Thank you very much to all the patrons, and best of luck. Okay, here we go. John K. Thanks a bunch, John. Really appreciate it. You're going to receive My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh, plus some delicious coffee, and I hope you love both. Thanks a bunch. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Please subscribe if you have not already. There's like half of you watching who have not subscribed. I'd sincerely appreciate it if you did. It really helped me out. Thanks a bunch. And also, if you'd be so kind and you enjoyed this, hit the thumbs up. And always remember, bring a book wherever you go. All right. Take care of yourselves. Have a great night. Talk to you soon. Ciao.